The biggest question in all of Stardom remains: who should dethrone Saya Kamitani for the World of Stardom Championship? Let's talk about it. As we approach Supreme Fight 2026 in Osaka, the question must be asked: who should dethrone Saya Kamitani? It's a new year. There's new wrestlers, there's new opportunities, and I think we all can agree that this year will be the one that Saya finally drops the World of Stardom Championship. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of whatever we do here. Thank you for joining me as always. I am always happy to talk with all of you. Hopefully, you're enjoying all the content we continue to put out. We had 2 videos last week, including a 15th anniversary Stardom special that I really enjoyed doing. If you haven't checked that out yet, it's me talking about my journey into Stardom, into Joshi, and some of my favorite wrestlers, matches, and moments from the company's history. So, go check that out if you haven't. We also had the start of the Icon collection, the 15th anniversary Icon Forever review, including Mayu Utami's 15th anniversary match against Utami Hayashishita. Hopefully, you enjoy that as well. But like I said, today we are here to answer the biggest question in all of Stardom: who should dethrone Saya Kamitani? And with such a massive match on the horizon, I thought this is the perfect time to ask that. Before we preview Supreme Fight next week, before that match happens, I think it's the best time with the start of the year to ask who should do it. And that is what we are here to answer today. I have all the options on the board that I think are true options to pay attention to, and we'll see how we land. But yeah, thank you everyone for the continued support. We continue to storm on here in the new year. If you have been a part of the channel, whether it be over the last month, over the past over the past year, thank you so much. We're pretty much celebrating the first true anniversary of what we've been doing here since I've really went all in on YouTube. So I appreciate each and every one of you. But with that being said, let's get to the video now, shall we? And I think when it comes to the question of who should dethrone Saya Kamitani, it's not an easy one to answer. That's why there's no reason that Stardom's had to answer it yet. And I think part of the discussion, it's something that I've talked about a lot over the last year, is there was no reason to dethrone Saya Kamitani. There wasn't. But I think there are a lot of potential choices sitting out there right now in this promotion. I also think that for someone like Saya Kamitani, perhaps coming back around as a babyface in a chase to re-win this title in the not so distant future could be something Stardom would want to continue or consider. If you remember my predictions, which if you haven't checked that out, go make sure you check that out. That video rolls on for the entire year. I talked about Saya Kamitani. I said I think she's gonna be kicked out of hate, and I think I even went as far as say she wins the 5-star Grand Prix. So I am fully on the idea that she could very, very well be someone who loses this title in the early part of the year. The big overarching story of Stardom right now is hate versus essentially everyone, right? And we have seen a lot of people involved in that story. So for me, a lot of the discussion here today is talking about the options of who can beat Saya. And is there a right time to beat Saya? Right? Company still remains super duper hot. Even with her missing most of the past month, still company is on top of the world. Big time Cork and sell or not sellouts, but big time Cork and numbers, all these different things. So it is a fascinating time to consider this. But I have also thrown the idea around that with the proposed or potential Tokyo Dome show that they want to do, could that show be best aided by a Saya Kamitani challenge in the main event? Very similar to what, say, Tam Nakano has done in the past, whether it be at All Star Grand Queendom 1 or 3. I think all of these things should be on the table. All these things are worth discussing, and it's why it is very much worth discussing here today as the new year is still in full swing. She hasn't had a defense yet in 2026 that we really do ask the question, who should be the one to take the red belt from her? You know, she's coming off that loss to Shuri as well, so I think we're in an interesting time where perhaps finally every defense might feel like a chance for Saya to lose the belt. And I think that's why this is such a perfectly timed discussion. So let's get to the potential options to dethrone Saya Kamitani, who, mind you, if you want statistics, obviously well over a year as World of Stardom Champion. She's still a ways away from being the longest reigning World of Stardom Champion, but I do think these things are important as well because right? We are in a world with Stardom that they want to set records with Saya Kamitani. They want to do so much with Saya Kamitani. So it would be crazy to not at least take that into consideration. Nanai Takahashi has the longest reign of all time. The first reign, which was 602 days, Io Shirai in her record-breaking second reign that included um, 13 successful defenses, that reign was 546. Could she be chasing those numbers? Absolutely. She's also 7 defenses away from the record in terms of the defense record, which would give her both because obviously she has the Wonder of Stardom Championship one as we speak. But I do think all those numbers matter. Perhaps she doesn't even lose the title this year. Perhaps Stardom just says, let's go all the way again. I do think in the current wrestling world, that's really hard to do. But if she continues to be popular, I get it. But like I said, with the big story that we are seeing in real time here, it is hate versus everyone. And obviously, Saya being at the head of the snake there, her losing the belt seems like the one of the bigger talking points. So let's get to it. Let's see who the options are, I believe. And then I will land on, who I think is the most likely in the very end. So first up, we have the rematches. I've titled all 3 of these sections. This one is the rematches. People she's already defended the World of Stardom Championship against in this very reign, and it all starts with Natsupoi. Natsupoi is someone who I've said in the past, why not? I said when she defended the title against her right before the 5-star Grand Prix and had that big match, and Natsupoi had a really passionate month, I'd say, of explaining and kind of attacking Sai. I said, I feel like Natsupoi makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the connection with Tam Nakano too. It speaks for itself, right? So to me, Natsupoi remains an obvious choice. There's a lot of things working for Natsupoi. Natsupoi also, part of the first ever Stardom New Japan marriage that should bolster her spot in the company, I think, because that is a big deal. And if you're Stardom, why wouldn't you want to celebrate that and perhaps see her rise to the World of Stardom Championship and finally become world champion. It is a story for Natsupoi that has been right there and remains right there despite the on and off, I think, booking of her overall. But I have never wavered. I have said many times that uh, she should at least be in the conversation. When she had that match and lost, I said she will be the one to do it. That being said, there's a reason I have her talk about her first. I don't know if they're willing to do what I think they should be willing to do, and that's a bummer. That's a bummer, but Natsupoi has incredible chemistry with Saya Kamitani. They've had great matches. I think the story can be there to play that through. Maybe you even bring Sari into it, right? Sari obviously beating Natsupoi at Queendom. I think that was an interesting result overall. But perhaps that can lead to a Saya rematch and then a Saya Natsupoi rematch. I think that is a direction we could go here, and it would be Natsupoi being the one to overcome Saya Kamitani. Like I said, I think there's so much likability behind Natsupoi as is. We have never let go of the Cosmic Angels versus Saya Kamitani story. We have continued that through Tam Nakano's retirement and beyond, right? We've seen her defend against Natsupoi. We've seen her against Ariano. Why not come back to it? I think that at least should be on the table. The other rematch. The other rematch that I feel like could be overlooked here is Azumi. You know, Azumi has been uniquely, doing nothing. You know, she lost the New Japan Strong Women's title to Saya Kamitani so that she could lose it back to Shuri, which was a unique thing. When Azumi dropped that belt to Saya, I really thought it was to give Saya 3 belts. No, that was not the payoff. So as I look at all the other rematches in the Saya Kamitani title reign, I said to myself, well, Azumi is interesting. Azumi has pinned Saya over the past year. They have tons of history, obvious history to play to. Why not Azumi? Now, I think the clearest version is, like I said, they're not doing anything with her. They haven't shown much um, interest, I think, in making her that top billing star. I don't think she's all too involved in this hate versus everyone story. I don't really think, honestly, I don't feel she's all too involved in any way right now. So to me, it would have to be a major reheat for someone who has so many fans on her side, that has always had continued support, that many, I think, agree are questioning, "What are we doing with Azumi?" And I think that has been a question that has continuously been asked, and continuously been asked. Um, do they see Azumi as a World of Stardom champion caliber wrestler? I don't know. But to me, with the history, with her obvious skill set and her ability and the story, she needs to be in the conversation. And a rematch for these two facing off, because they are split one apiece, you have to remember that. I don't think she should be out of the question by any means. And she's one of the late additions, I'll admit, to the possibilities that I have listed here. But I do think she should receive plenty of conversation, at least if they are willing to reheat her, which they should be. They should be no matter what, whether she goes for this belt or the Wonder Belt, they should be willing to reheat her. The wild cards. The wild cards are ones that I don't think really come to mind for anyone, but they're ones that I think are just fascinating to talk about, just fascinating to consider, and need to be considered. And that starts with Hanan. Hanan is very interesting in terms of what belt does she win, because I think everyone agrees she's winning one of the top 2 belts probably this year. And while most people, myself included, do believe the Wonder of Stardom Championship will be the one that Hanan wins, I sit here and I say again, why can't it be the World of Stardom Championship? Hanan was the woman that Saya Kamatani named last year in a very, very special interview of, like, right after Queendom, you know, she was asked, "Who's, like, you know, a good guy essentially that people should be following, that people should be interested in?" And Saya Kamatani named Hanan. Fast forward to the nationally broadcasted match that was a major, major, major deal. It was Saya Kamatani versus Hanan on that match. They see a lot of potential in Hanan. They're going to go all the way with Hanan in terms, I think, of maybe both titles. But I don't think it's crazy to think she could skip the Wonder of Stardom Championship and go to the World of Stardom Championship, because uniquely, since the minute she's come back, it hasn't been, "I'm going for Konami, the person that took me out." She hasn't really acknowledged her at all. Would it be crazy to think that Stardom would want to Hanan to be their next babyface ace? I don't think so in the slightest. I think most people kind of expect that in many ways. So I bring her to the table because I do think she's a wild card, because I do think the Wonder of Stardom Championship is ultimately where she's going to end up. But I don't want to not have her included here, because I do think there is at least potential in that, at least a conversation in that. Um, and, you know, they had that big, 5-star Grand Prix main event in Corkin last year, which this image is from. So, they are pushing this match lightly, but they are pushing this match over the past year. We haven't seen it yet for the World of Stardom Championship, but is it crazy to think we could? I don't think so. And especially leading stars now, she leads her own faction. I don't think it is crazy whatsoever to say they could go with Hana, you know? The next wild card option, however, is the most wild card of them all, and people are gonna probably say, "I don't see that," and I think that's fair. But that is Fuwichan. I said it on her after her debut against Hazuki, and I said it on the prediction show. Fuwichan is someone that I think they can go all in on. They've already started to protect her in many ways, right? She's not working show to show to show. She's working Corkins, she's working the pay-per-views. Can't wait for her match with Rena. That was made for me. Can't wait for that one. But she's someone that they're very aware is already a major, major star for them. They're well aware of that. So, pushing her very quickly to the main event, once she again proves herself, is not something I am taking out of the question because, again, like I said, she is someone who has immediate popularity because of her non-wrestling career, and Fuwichan versus Saya Kamitani feels like the biggest Stardom roster match they have in terms of just peak popularity. I do think there are bigger matches to be had in joshi that includes Saya Kamitani, but on the roster itself, in terms of popularity, does it get bigger? I don't think so. Fuwichan has already proven to be a big name for them, selling out all her merch at Ryogoku nearly instantly and being part of all these big time shows where she's only on the opening tag, but it's bringing in eyes, it's bringing in numbers. I think it would be silly to rule out Fuwichan because we don't know what kind of meteoric rise she can have. And I think if Stardom wanted to put her in a big match with Saya Kamitani this year, they could. I really do. I think she's that good. I think she's that talented, and I think she's that easy to root for and get behind in a big World of Stardom Championship match. And if they wanted to go crazy, they could pull that trigger and give Fuwichan the title. I don't expect it because again, there is the other aspect of this of like, you know, the roster could be upset by that or whatever. But listen, when you bring in a big star like this, it's very similar in New Japan, for example, right? They brought in Aaron Wolf, and I know Aaron Wolf's an Olympian; it's a little different, but they brought in Aaron Wolf. He won a championship day one, right? He won a championship day one, and it's not like he won a rookie future title. No, he won the Never Open win. I guess it's not the world title, but she didn't walk in day one to win the future of Stardom Championship. I think her walking in continue to building and continue to get to a point where they could consider it makes her a true wild card option. Probably the least likely option on this entire conversation that we have here today, but one that I refuse to ignore. I refuse to ignore because I just think there's something there when it comes to Fuwichan versus Saya Kamitani, and I'm sure they see that. My final wild card option is a member of hate. Momo Watanabe obviously not here due to her injury, but that also could have fit in the rematches. But I am just so intrigued uh by where we're at in terms of this story and what they're trying to do, right? Hate has all the gold, everyone has a championship except for Momo Watanabe, but she's hurt, so that's fine. But everyone has a title of some sort. Everyone looks cool with the titles. You see the big pose. They're putting all the baby faces, literally everyone in the company up against them. But we have seen over the past number of months, hate versus hate. We have seen Rina versus Konami as recently as last week. A phenomenal match, by the way. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. I wish I got a chance to talk about it here on the show. I just didn't have the moment to do so. But we've seen Saya Kamitani versus Momo Watanabe after Momo wins the 5-star Grand Prix. Why can't we see Saya Kamitani versus Natsuko Tora? Why can't we see a Saya Kamitani versus Arena or a rematch with Momo Watanabe or a match with Konami, who has been elevated massively over the past number of months? Again, wild cards. Not likely, but possible, especially if my theory or my prediction of her getting kicked out of hate at any point in this year does happen. Now, do I expect her to get kicked out of hate when she's World of Stardom champion? Not necessarily, but I wanted to include them. They were the last second addition to this because I thought to myself, well, I don't think it's entirely out of the question. I don't think it's a crazy thing. And very similar to, Evil is leaving, of course, New Japan Pro Wrestling, but when Evil won the the IWGP double belts, whatever, he was originally part of Los Igor LIJ. I can never say it. And then he, of course, turns, formed House of Torture, all that. But like that could work for any of these wrestlers. What if Arena gets kicked out and Rena takes over? Because Rena just had one of the best babyface performances we've seen. The crowd loves her. I think you have to consider everything. I think you have to. And when it comes to hate, the popularity of this group, it plays a part. Now, like I've been saying, the story is baby faces versus hate. Feels like the baby faces should probably take the belt from Saya Kamitani. But that's what wild cards are for. So for those counting, your rematches were Natsupoi and Azumi. Your wild cards were Hanan, Fuachan, and a member of Hate. And we were going to close here. This is a nice, short, quick video. Nice, quick video, but one that I felt like we needed to have this conversation. We'll be back, of course, with more Stardom content next week. We also have a future Joshi coming up for those wondering. And we'll probably review at least Mayu Iwatani versus Komo Minami. Maybe that whole Shinjuku face show for Marigold on Friday. But that's besides the point. We have to get to the favorites. We have to talk about the favorites because it is a conversation worth having so close to a match where, yes, you guessed it, a favorite is considered. So we talk about the favorites here. And that, of course, should start with Starlight Kid. Starlight Kid is someone who has consistently come up in the conversation of people that can beat Saya Kamitani. This is ultimately one of their most protected matches, even if on accident. We know this match was originally set for Okinawa last year, but Starlight Kid's injuries forced it not to happen. I think that was a gift in disguise. Now that Starlight Kid has moved on from the Wonder of Stardom Championship, the next direction, the next place for her is the World of Stardom Championship. And for me, I don't even know if it necessarily has to be this first challenge, but I think it can be as soon as this first challenge. Stardom has not been afraid to pull a shocking win out of their hat. Not once. They have done it before. We saw Konami win the Wonder of Stardom Championship literally 3 months ago from Starlight Kid to shock everyone at Supreme Fight 2026 in Osaka, a show that they have made bigger, in my opinion, than Stardom Dream Queendom, which is a inarguably bigger show, tells you everything you need to know. They believe in this matchup. This was the first thing they said, hey, this is what we're doing to kick off 2026. Starlight Kid is that big of a star. Saya Kamitani is obviously Saya Kamitani. And I have said, really, if you remember my video back last year during the summer, I said, who's going to be the next top baby face of Stardom? Because that was a big part of this and very similar to this conversation in some ways. But Starlight Kid was a very, very obvious top option. And now that we have reached this moment, with that title on the line, Saya Kamitani coming off a long break, coming off a major loss to Shuri at Wrestle Kingdom, I think we are now in the point where the conversation begins, and the conversation absolutely begins with Starlight Kid. Why rule out Starlight Kid? Why rule out a Starlight Kid victory? I don't think it's something we should rule out whatsoever. And I think she should seriously be considered as your next World of Stardom champion, whether it be now or maybe a few months down the line she re-challenges. For Starlight Kid, it's either now or things work to her favor. Saya Kamitani's champion again for up to 2 years, and then she challenges. It depends what they want to do with Saya. Records are on the line here. Possibilities are on the line. Does she get through All-Star Grand Queendom as world champion? That is a big question. But I think it goes without saying that Starlight Kid is among the favorites. to potentially dethrone Saya Kamitani. But to me, she's not the top favorite, and I think the top option for most, including Stardom, is our final favorite and our final conversation point here tonight, and that is Micah. Micah stormed back onto the scene at the end of last year by pinning Saya Kamitani in the middle of the ring. That was her return match. She pinned Saya Kamitani. She has been leading the we must take down hate. We must end hate's reign over us all. Micah has been their top choice for a long time. Saya Kamitani turned on Micah to join hate back in 2024. Every sign possible has pointed it being Micah. I had said last year when we talked about the top baby faces, Micah's not here. Who's going to step up? Well, Micah's back. I don't know if anyone necessarily stepped up to be that top baby face. It's Micah. As far as I'm concerned, in their eyes, it's Micah. And I think she is the most likely to dethrone Saya Kamitani for the World of Stardom Championship and most likely at All Star Grand Queendom 2026. That's kind of where I'm at. You know, Micah and Saya have more history than anyone on here besides debatably Azumi, but even so, these two have been the golden rivalry. I remember writing an article about them years ago for Voices of Wrestling, talking about how they are the golden rivalry. They were the rivalry of the golden generation. They set, you know, that bar was set years ago when they were fighting over the Wonder of Stardom Championship. They faced each other in the Cinderella tournament final. They have faced each other for the World of Stardom Championship in Micah's reign. They are the rivalry that Stardom has and continues to believe in. No matter who books the promotion, no matter who does what, how many people become, you know, big stars since then, this is their rivalry. So to me, especially with Micah being the one to declare war on hate, she is the one that probably will and probably should, for their story's sake, be the one to dethrone Saya Kamitani. It just feels too obvious to ignore. That's why she is, I think, by far the favorite. But I think every option I went over here today is and should be at least considered because Stardom luckily has amazing options. I didn't even get to talk about the Suzukis of the world, the Hazukis of the world. You know, some of my favorites that I would love to see at least be in the conversation because I do think that there is a clear tier that Stardom sees certain wrestlers in, especially wrestlers that are going to beat their number one star. And Micah feels like that. Could you see Micah win an All Star Grand Queendom? Saya Kamitani come back around as a different wrestler by the end of the year and face Micah, win the 5-star Grand Prix, and face Micah maybe outside of hate for that title? I think that's obviously in the question. I think a lot of things are in the question, but I think that definitive win the moment Micah walked back in the door was the ultimate sign of that's our girl. That is our champ. That is our top baby face. That is who we believe in. You know, like I feel like that is something that Stardom has told us for years now is that Micah is the one. And it was so weird when Micah lost the World of Stardom titles with Saya Kamitani, right? And they face off in the 5-star Grand Prix final, and Micah overcomes her and wins that, but immediately loses her title match and hasn't been involved in the World of Stardom Championship conversation since then. It always felt a little weird to me, and part of that to me is because her injury took her out for so long. I feel like we would have got back to there eventually, but now that Micah's back and she kind of feels in many ways the full force version of Micah, kind of combining her newer self with her world title self. She is the option, and to me, she will be the option. I don't know at the end of the day if this comes true, but I think there's a reason she's the favorite, and I think she's the reason we should be highlighting her the most. Her, SLK, I think are both considerable favorites. Starts with SLK this next Saturday, the February 7th, a fantastic, highly anticipated match. Like I said, probably the most highly anticipated World of Stardom Championship match since the Tam Nakano match at All Star Grand Queendom. I think that gives a credit to who Starlight Kid is in terms of popularity and who they see her as and the potential that match has. You know, I really do. I think that is the most hyped, most anticipated Saya Kamitani defense since then, and that says a lot. That says a lot about Starlight Kid and who she is. I think that says a lot about that challenge, but there's a reason to me that I have Micah just ahead of her as the number 1 favorite to win it, probably the most likely to and should win it considering she is the one building the story of uh, we have to take down hate. The one thing for me working against Starlight Kid compared to a Micah is in so many ways, the Saya Kamatani break. You know, her taking a break for a month and getting herself refreshed to me seems like a way to, one, give her an actual refresh because she's been going, 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 but two, give her a way to kind of beat Kid, play story to that of you took all this time off and blah, 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 and ultimately give her, you know, give Saya this massive, massive victory and potentially her second to last defense before All-Star Grand Queendom. Um, I think it's too far for it to be the last defense, but I guess it wouldn't be that crazy if it happened in February. Wait till April. Wouldn't be that shocking even if it was the last defense to get Starlight Kid in there before Micah ultimately becomes the one to defeat her. So I think those are all the favorites, all the wild cards, all the rematches, all the potential options to dethrone Saya Kamatani for the World of Stardom Championship. So I ask all of you, who do you think should dethrone Saya Kamatani for the World of Stardom Championship? I think there's a lot of ways to look at it. Is it an option I named? Is it an option I didn't name? Do you think Saya Kamatani should just break all the records, break the defense record, break the time record, or days held record? Should she just do that? You know, it's a proven commodity. She's at the top of the world. She is the number 1 star, whether she loses this belt or not. Let me know below. Let me know below because I do think that's actually very well in the conversation. For me, it's like you have Starlight Kid, you have Micah, and you just have Saya reigning on through the rest of this year. But eventually, someone's got to dethrone her. And to me, we've listed all the potential options. There's a lot of people on this list that get a lot more bumped up if there is time. Right now, the favorites are the favorites because of All Star Grand Queendom and Starlight Kid challenging here soon. But I think that's kind of the lovely part of this conversation. So let me know below, who do you think should dethrone Saya Kamatani? And answer this question for me too. Do you want Saya Kamatani to lose the belt soon? Or do you think she should keep reigning on until Stardom needs to have any sort of pivot? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you press that like button. Make sure you share this channel, share this video with your friends who may like Joshi Wrestling. We're here to talk Joshi Wrestling each and every week right here on the YouTube channel. That's all I do. That's all we do here on the channel. And like I said, I have a post up over on the YouTube channel if you haven't seen it, asking for recommendations. Is there any other types of content you want to see? Historic, non-historic, whatever it may be, let me know. And hopefully you overall enjoy this video. Thank you everyone who continues to support, continues to subscribe. It means the world to me. Like I said, we'll be back in the coming week with a Marigold review on Friday from their Shinjuku Face show, most likely, or it'll be a Marigold Joshi weekly update. We'll see what works out there, but we will have a video for them. We will also have a Future of Joshi January edition, talking about all the young stars of the scene who really stood out to begin the year and all that they've accomplished. So look forward to that. We will also have the February 7th Supreme Fight 2026 in Osaka preview and review over the next 2 weeks as well for Stardom. So keep an eye out on that. We have so much scheduled over the next 2 months. I worked on the schedule the other day. I'm very excited to bring it all to you. So hopefully you all enjoy that. So thank you everyone for listening as always. And until next time, everyone, so long. See you later.